everyone, this is Karen from All Fired Up, and we would love those of us here at All Fired Up would love to encourage everyone to get out and vote. And to that end, we've got a fun, quick project for you. All the supplies for this are available here at the store, and we'd be happy to package them up for you. We have a plate here. I'm using the Coop salad plate, but you could do a larger scale one of these. We have a doily. We have some of these that we can give you for this project. And then our paints and a sponge. You can use any sponge that you have at home. And then we'll be putting a quote on this. You can do your quote freehand. I'll show you how to do that with marker. Or we also have quotes that we can print out for you. You can tell us what you'd like it to say and we can print it out for you, and that creates a tracing. This project is in honor of the fabulous RBG, and I'm ready to get started here. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using some of our black lab. You could use any black you want, but RBG is famous for her gown with the lace collar. So I've taken some of that. I think I need a little more. I'm going to squirt it out on my plate. Here's my plate. So I've got about a quarter's worth. I don't know. It's spread out a little bit. Then I'm going to take my sponge. I'm going to take the doily, and I'm going to position the doily kind of off-centered. You could do this centered if you like. It probably would look better on a larger plate if you like. But I'm going to do mine kind of off-centered. Rule in art, and again, rules are made to be broken, so you can do whatever you like, but a rule in art is the thirds rule. Visually, we humans tend to like things that are not divided right in half. So when you lay this down, don't lay your doily down so that it's exactly right in half. That will feel awkward to the person viewing it. So you're going to slide it. I'm going to slide mine this way a little bit. And let's see, that would give me a large circle of white, or I could slide it this way and I would have a smaller circle of white. But I think I'm going to do this larger circle of white. I'm going to kind of hold it down with my one hand. When I'm teaching the kids workshops, I always tell them, hold things down with the hand that you do not write with. So for you guys, same thing, whatever hand you don't write with. And let's see, can we see my little paper plate here with the paint on it? Maybe. I'm going to dip the sponge in the paint, and then I'm going to pat it off on the table. I'm going to actually hold that in front of it for the first time just to show you guys. So I'm going to dip it in the paint, and I'm going to pat it on the plate a little bit to get the excess off. And that's what I'll continue doing through this process, but now I obviously don't want it on the plate. Holding the doily in place, I'm going to pounce gently up and down. Any doily will work. You can use the ones that we have here. We're happy to give them to you. Or you can use your own. So I'm loading my sponge again. Again, I'm dipping it in the paint and I'm pouncing it a little bit tapping it a little bit on the plate that I'm using as a palette so that it doesn't, the sponge is not overloaded, because when it's overloaded, what ends up happening is that it ooches around under there. Ooch is a very artistic word there. So I'm going to keep doing that. The great thing about black, if you've ever been in the pottery studio before, you probably have heard us tell you, if you want it to be solid, you have to paint 3 coats. And that one coat typically is a little bit streaky. The great thing about black, especially with this technique here where we're stamping it, kind of bouncing up and down, is that one coat is really enough. I mean, you don't want to go too thin on that one coat, but one coat should do it. So I'm going to keep going with my doily here. And a trick that I did not do, which you probably can tell if you can see my palette paper plate floating around, is you can tape your palette down, and that way it won't slide around on you while you're doing this. So then I'm going to go, and this doing it over the lacy part of the doily is what's going to create the collar. By the way, these really sweet head vases that I'm pushing out of the screen just now so that I can get to that part of the plate, we don't have them in stock yet. They're new this year, but we are getting them in stock and we're very excited about them and hoping to do kind of a women's history, maybe an observation of Women's Month in March. Or maybe not, but at some point, as soon as we can get these in, we're hoping to do some kind of event with these vases. And if we're not able to do that, we definitely are going to carry them in the studio because they are just so much fun. And there's a lot of different stuff you can do with them. Okay, so I am just finishing up. Now I'm going to go down to this part of the plate that doesn't have the doily on it. I'm going to be careful around the edges of the doily, especially as it gets wet. This really isn't a hard technique, but if you're kind of a distracted personality like I am, you can go a little bit awry because the doily will eventually get wet and lift a little bit easier. So be a little gentle when you're working with the doily. But in the words of Bob Ross, there are no mistakes, just happy accidents. So you can see probably that I've just about got that covered. I could brush this part if I prefer it. I'm kind of one of those people who cooks in one pan if possible. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep with the tool that I've already got started. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to gently lift the doily up, and I'm going to be careful not to kind of slide it back and forth or drag it across the plate, because in doing that I could potentially mess up the delicacy of the lace. And there we have a nice collar on our plate. Now what I would normally do is I would be patient and I would let this dry out because I'm more likely to drag my hand through it at this point. But for the sake of the video and to keep it fast, these are our little quotes here, and I'm going to cut my eye off. And I'm going to cut the descent in half. And it's not that I'm not going to use that eye, but if I do that, then I can lay it like this when I'm doing my tracing. Okay, and I'm going to leave a little bit of room here because I'm going to want to do Ruth Bader Ginsburg's initials right here. But this is basically how it works. I've got that where I want it. And again, this will be much easier for you guys because you guys have the time at home to let this dry. It's starting to dry. I do have some wet spots over there, but it's easier kind of to do it upside right. And for that, I would be dragging my hands through the black at this point. So I'm going to go backwards. So I've got my tracing tissue here that we printed out, and I've got any washable marker. We do have washable markers that we can loan out to you or give to you, but if you get home and want to do this, any washable marker will work fine. So I'm tracing over my lettering with the marker. And when I do that, it will bleed through. Incidentally, those of you who are wondering how we have all this beautiful lettering on stuff, part of it is because we've got the very talented Mel, and part of it is because we use this technique. So I pick it up. It is a little bit messy. That's okay. I don't have to paint it messy. I'm going to go ahead and position this S. And I'm going to slowly go over this. Now, if this marker were so sloppy and so thick that I really couldn't read it and I was having trouble with it, the great thing about this is it is not permanent until it's in pottery paint and we have fired it. So the marker burns away in the kiln. It's kind of like magic ink. So this is just at this point a guide for me. So now I've got the word descent there, and then I've got my eye. I'm going to put that over this way a little bit. And I want to move that up just a tiny bit. Like I said, this marker is a little thick. If I don't want it that thick, I simply just don't have to paint it that thick. So now I've got the word transferred on there in the nicer handwriting. And once I have it done like that, I can take a fine brush. Back in the day, we would put this in our mouth and kind of spin it around to get the bristles nice and pointy. We don't do that anymore because of the virus, so I'm dipping it in the water, and then I might want to twirl it between my fingers to get a nice point on it. Then I'll dip it in the water again and dip it in my black paint, and I'll be ready to trace. I think I'm going to start with my T. And you can see, because this brush is nice and fine, I've got a much finer line going than my marker line. I'm kind of sticking to more like the paper that I traced. When this comes out of the kiln, only the black lines that I've painted will show up. I may want to thicken some parts of them up to make the lettering style a little bit more interesting, but that's basically the technique. So, hurry in. This is a great activity to do, to celebrate after you voted. Vote early if you possibly can, by mail or your drop box in New Jersey, or your county board of elections has a drop-off site that you can use. All of that stuff is available online pretty easily and also came in your ballot. And if you can't vote by any of those early methods, please definitely vote in person. And we look forward to seeing you in the store again and would love to help you out with this piece. Have a great day.